I had had my first mammogram, and in that mammogram, they found some suspicious lesions. And that's what led to the surgery and the it's called a needle localization procedure, where a radiologist sticks a large bore needle into the center of your breast, into the lesions, and then pulls the needle out and leaves a wire in place so that the surgeon knows where to cut. Anyway, so that's what was going on immediately before I had my very first experience.
No, that's incredible. But from a, obviously your NDEs have changed who you are as a person. I'm sure they have. Before that, how would you compare your life, how you were as a person before to how you are now?
I was a hard driving trial lawyer, and just what people would imagine, I would be like, I needed to win and I needed to make money. But I was a good person. I was spiritual. I was a Roman Catholic. And I had always, tried to lead a good life.
You mentioned that in 1994 you had the mammogram, and then what happened?
Um, Ladies, don't always wait to feel a lump before you get a mammogram, because there are cancers that do not form a lump until late in the stages. So I had what's called an excisional biopsy, because there wasn't a lump to feel. The surgeon had to, take me into the operating room and remove a chunk of my breast to get all three of the lesions. And in order to find, where the lesions were located, the radiologist had to do this needle localization procedure. And I had no medications, and I hadn't had anything to eat or drink since midnight the night before. And this was like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 in the morning. And the radiologist gave me a local anesthetic in the skin, and that was it. But she couldn't get the wire in the right place the first time. So we went through the whole procedure twice. It took about an hour and 15 minutes. And she gave me a second shot of anesthesia, of local anesthetic. And that's what triggered a fatal cardiac arrhythmia and caused me to die. I think I had something like 8 mammograms to check, make sure the wire was in the right place. And then after the radiologist and technician left the room, I was sitting there with a wire in my breast, just waiting. And my heart was just beating faster than I thought was even humanly possible. And I kept trying to breathe, that calming breath thing. I kept trying to calm my heart down that way. And finally, it did calm down. What I didn't know is that it stopped. So I went out of my body and into the light, and I had the deepest, most intricate afterlife experience on record, at least so far as I can find. I've been looking for 30 years. I reviewed about 2,000 near-death experience accounts, looking for others like me. I finally found 32 of them, and that's what my book behind me, 33 Souls Who Met God, is about. It's the 33 of us represent 1.7% of all near-death experiences. And I and they went into the afterlife past the point where most other NDEers turn around. We had life reviews, which is usually the last thing that someone who actually does make it into the afterlife experiences. And then they are either told they have to go back, or they decide to come back, or they're resuscitated and they're pulled back. But we went past that point. And Natasha, I had some of the wildest experiences, and some of the others of the 32 did as well. I mean, we saw Earth's past and future. I saw Earth's past and future. I watched the entire history of religion among humans as kind of like a documentary movie. I learned the answers to all my spiritual questions. I had tons and tons of information just downloaded directly into my mind in a way that I call knowings, and other afterlife experiencers call them knowings, because It's not like you're learning something and it's not in words. It's like a computer download directly into your mind, complete with full understanding of everything that has ever been known or could ever be known about a particular topic from the standpoint of having actually lived it. So it's firsthand personal knowledge of everything. And I got downloads like that about dozens and dozens of topics. I also had this wonderful experience that I call virtual living, where the incarnation phase is a phase of the afterlife. It's not the entire afterlife. It's not the only thing you get to experience there. You can choose to stop incarnating and choose to go into another stage that I call virtual living, where I merged myself into my 5 light being friends that I reunited with in the afterlife. I did it 1 at a time or 2 at a time. They had told me that in order to go forward and to reunify with the source, only they didn't call it the source. I call it that. They called it the rest of us. They said in order to do that, I had to remember how to do this merger thing, where I merged my energy into other people's energies. So I did that for a long time. I could merge into one of my friends and live snippets of their lives that they had lived. And I could do that either as them or as me. So it was like first person experience or third person experience. And they had been doing this during my life review. They were popping in and out of my life, living snippets of my life. And then I got to do it, in theirs. And eventually I got to the point where I could merge into all 5 of them at once. Speaking of my life review, I had the standard NDE life review, but I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, because at the same time, I was remembering hundreds and hundreds or thousands of other physical lifetimes I had lived throughout the universe. And they were all crisp and clear and perfect recall, total detail, all at the same time. And I could relive them, 1 or more at the same time. And I was flabbergasted that I could possibly have ever forgotten all that living, as all kinds of creatures and things all over the universe. And my all-time favorite lifetime was as a nebula. And I remembered living as a nebula where, they're like a gaseous cloud or something. And I could feel that I was inside all these little particles of gas spread out in space. And I could see these magnificent colors throughout, the galaxies and the universe. And I could feel like I was one whole entity, but I could feel each individual part too. It was the most amazing thing. But anyway, after merging into my 5 light being friends, we went forward, and there's no good word for it. I've used merger in the past, and I found that confuses people and disturbs them. Reunified, rejoined, I don't know what the word is, but what happens when we've actually completed an incarnation and are ready to go back home is what happened to me and the other 32 souls, is you wake up with the knowledge and the realization that you are actually source, that you are the creator, that you are God, that you are Allah, that you are all the divine beings that humans worship. And that this divine being has like a core personality with character traits, one of which is a sense of humor, by the way. But it is also composed of these zillions and zillions and zillions of what we call souls. And so souls that incarnate, into all kinds of things in the universe and bring that experience back to the core. So I woke up as the core, and it was the most moving experience I've ever had. One thing that struck me was that I'd done this to myself. All the suffering I've experienced as Nanci, I did it to myself. I chose it. You know, it was what I wanted. And then the next wave of realizations was that I had never been alone. There was always Nanci, the body, and me, and all the rest of us in Source. I'd never been forgotten. I'd never been unloved. I'd never been without resources. And throughout this entire time, I was aware that I was Source. And, you know, throughout all the other adventures I had in the afterlife, I kept saying, somebody's got to tell those people. And I meant the people down on earth. Because when I died, I was a Roman Catholic. I believed, you know, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and the Holy Spirit, and, you know, the whole 9 yards that the Catholic Church taught. So I kept saying, somebody's got to tell those people that it's nothing like that. And the next thing I know, I'm back into Nanci's body saying, I didn't mean me. So that was my very first experience with the afterlife.
Wow, that is incredible.
I think I get.
Yeah, I'd love to know more. I just want to ask you, it's like if the creator were to be the ocean, that we were all drops as part of the ocean. And when you are a drop, you're not aware of the greater ocean. And then when you go to the ocean, you merge with it and you become one with it again. Is it something like that?
That's the closest analogy I can think of, yes.
Wow. So, wow, how long were you out for? Because it sounds like if you went that deep.
Yeah. My medical record said about half an hour.
Wow, that's incredible. So is there a reason why certain people go a certain distance? Because I've interviewed a couple that have been quite far and others not. Is it just by accident that they were left long enough? Because there must be another reason.
Well, I spent 3 years collating this research that I gathered in these 2000 NDE reports, trying to find the answer to that question, because I wanted to know, was it because I was there a long time, or was it, you know, I wanted to know. The only feature that I could find that 42% of us had was that we remembered doing it before. We remembered crossing over and coming into the afterlife. And we remembered different features of the afterlife, but that was only 42%. So I don't know what accounts for the others. And some of them were dead for a couple of minutes. I was dead for half an hour. You know, I could not find a reason why some of us have this more expanded version and the others stop when they're barely across the threshold into the afterlife.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that we don't know. How was your life review? How did you experience that? Because I know you said you were experiencing a lot of things going on all at the same time, but how was that for you to go through that experience?
I don't remember much of it because, like I said, I was paying more attention to the other lifetimes I had lived. The only parts of the life review that I had that time that I remember were, it wasn't just like watching scenes from my life. It was reliving and watching data, sensory data that my body had collected. For example, I remember seeing every sky that I had ever seen from the little airplane that I used to fly when I was flying. And I could remember seeing the sky and what it looked like when I used to lay out in the sun and when I was in high school. I mean, it was just stuff like that. I had a second life review a few years later. In addition to, actually dying and going to the afterlife, I had what I call pop-ins, where my body, I don't think, died. I wasn't aware of it, if that's what happened. But I went back into the afterlife. And during that life review, I experienced not only, my life and how I felt during particular events, and I did watch all the events of this life, but also I could feel and understand how the other person in the events experienced it, what they thought and what they felt, and the impact on them. And one of the interesting things I learned from that particular experience is that our intentions count just as much as our actions. It's like if you mean well, even though it turns out badly, it still feels good when you're in the afterlife having your life review. And in that second life review, I saw Nanci's future, and I didn't like what I saw, so I changed it.
Wow.
I didn't do that either, but I did.
So they show you your future as well.
Some of the 33 souls saw their future, some didn't. And I don't know why.
No, well, I think everybody's got their own coding. I don't know what else to call it, but we've all got our own like journey that we go on, and everything is symbolic according to what we know and where our level of soul growth is, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The light beings, who were they? Who were these beings? Did you know them?
Yes, they were my most beloved eternal friends. I had never incarnated with any of them. What I think they mean is that certain souls are created at the same time. And what I witnessed, and some of the other of the 33 souls witnessed creation of the universe and of souls. And what I witnessed was that all souls were created at the same time. So the soul group is everybody, all of us.
Okay. All right. So at what point did you realize that you weren't alive anymore? Like, you know, your heart stopped. How did that feel?
Well, it felt great because it calmed down. I was in the afterlife quite a bit of time before I realized I had died. Because as soon as I got into the light, I started getting, flooded with unconditional love and acceptance. I was surprised by all the acceptance that I felt. And then I started getting all these downloads of knowings, and I was just kind of like watching them, flood my mind. And I was also trying to figure out what had happened to me. I did it like a medical review of, what's still working and what isn't. Well, I'm not breathing, my heart's not beating, but I can still see and hear, So I was trying to figure out and make a diagnosis. And then at one point, I was trying out my spiritual abilities, and I realized I could see 360 degrees. And one of those times when I was like looking out of what would have been the back of my head, I saw Nanci's body down in the mammography room, far below me. And I couldn't have died. I heard that when you die, you go through a tunnel into the light. And I'm in the light, and I didn't go through any tunnel. And boom, I'm in a tunnel. So just thinking the word tunnel put me in a tunnel. And this is how I learned about the fact that we souls literally create the physical reality that our bodies experience. So I was in this tunnel, and it wasn't like the beautiful stars and angels and loved ones beckoning you, the light at the end. I get dirt. I get a dirt tunnel made of these big hand-hewn stones, and it's very low ceiling and a dirt road going through it. It seemed like it's kind of like maybe an old railroad trestle from like maybe the 1920s. And I could smell the dirt, and I could hear, bugs, crickets, and I don't know what else. I could feel the humidity on my skin. It was 100% real. But I knew that I was actually in the light, and that the only reason why I was experiencing this tunnel was because I thought the word tunnel. So that's when I started. And I went through that scenario 3 times, manufacturing Earth-like environments, before I convinced myself that I had died, and what's next? I was ready for whatever was next.
Well, that reminds me of that movie, What Dreams May Come, with Kevin Costner, where his wife had created that whole scenario around her because that's what she thought of her life, because she was living in such misery and despair. And so she had all those dead trees. And
the afterlife itself is bliss. those things don't bring you happiness. You know, that crystal city or that garden, those don't bring you happiness. They just bring you comfort because it's what you're familiar with as a human. But as you get over the idea that you're human, you are completely filled with this overwhelming love and feeling of home. You know, it's when I was in the afterlife, it was the first time in Nanci's life I'd ever felt like I was actually home.
Okay, so I want to ask you about that, but I'll wait until we've gone through your other experiences. So you've had two more deep afterlife experiences, and then you say you met the council there. Who are the council, and how did they help you in your mission?
I learned that if you have been given a particular mission, what I call a mission, by source, and not very many people are. I mean, everybody thinks that they have a mission in life, and that helps motivate you, and to a certain extent you do, because your mission is to gather information and have experiences for source. But some people have a particular thing that they are supposed to do. And, you know, as you know, when you get back in human life, you don't remember, you know, what your mission was. So to keep those of us who are actually missionaries on track, we meet periodically with a council of light beings. I found only 2 other people besides myself, so that's 3 out of 2,000 who had these afterlife experiences that I call council meetings. And it's where, like, I went twice before, just like a group of light beings, none of whom I knew, but they let me know that I was there. They let you know that they're there to keep you on track, because you can't, because you don't remember what your mission was. So you don't know if you're on it or off of it. The second time, they told me that Nanci was dead, and that there was a good chance she wasn't going to recover, and that I could choose to stay in the afterlife, even though I hadn't completed my mission, and it wouldn't be held against me. Or I could choose to go back into Nanci, and that if I chose to go back, we would suffer for the rest of her natural life. And, you know, I thought about it and thought about it. And I wish they had shown me the future, but they didn't. They just said I had to decide. And I decided to come back into Nanci. I'm like, pick me, I'm the fool that wants to go for the suffering for the rest of my life, you know. But I did it for several reasons. One was I wanted to see the future. Because, I mean, I'd seen it in the afterlife the first time I was there, and I wanted to see how much of that was going to come true. So it was like this intense curiosity. But the bigger part was I didn't want to be a failure. I mean, when God gives you a mission, do you say no? You know? And I didn't want to let down all the people that I had promised to tell, you know, everything that happened to me, so that they would understand what life and God and the afterlife are really about. So I picked coming back into Nanci.
What is it? What is a pop? What would you call a pop in NDE? Like,
well, so when they first started happening, I kind of thought maybe they were flashbacks, you know, like humans can have a flashback to a traumatic event, but it was all new experiences. It wasn't reliving something I'd lived before. They were all new experiences. So I was just popping in. One of them was that Second Life review. One of them came while I was writing my book, Backwards Beliefs. After I came back from that very first afterlife experience, which was the most profound, I felt completely unmoored from everything. You know, everything that I had believed before I died was gone. And it was replaced with completely new knowings and personal experience. You know, I didn't believe anymore. I had actual personal experience and knowledge. And so I struggled for a long time, you know, how to put my life back together. That's when I left my law firm and went out on my own as an attorney. And I went through years of my body going haywire. I had white matter brain damage, like gray matter is the part you think with. At least that's the medical theory. It's not true, but I had white matter brain damage, and the white matter is where all these connections are made in your brain. And so I lost a lot of things that I had. I lost how to play the piano. I lost speaking French. I lost being able to multitask because of this white matter damage. Then my body couldn't keep a normal temperature. It would go down into the 95s, and I'd be freezing, but my skin would be hot, and I couldn't keep a normal heart rhythm or blood pressure. And I spent so many afternoons sitting in my primary care physician's office. Well, he would go see patients in between, and he'd come in and ask me questions, and he was trying to figure out what to do for me. And there wasn't anything. I mean, there were times when I couldn't sit up. There were times when, like I said, my body was just haywire. And during that 7-year period was when I wrote Backwards Beliefs. And while I was writing one of the chapters, I don't remember which one, I popped back into the afterlife and got this huge download of knowings that consisted of everything that has ever been and will ever be written by humans in all languages, all writings, all songs, all movies, all books, even like Post-it notes, little notes you put on your refrigerator, kids' homework, everything that had ever been written. And while it was like playing out in my mind, I would see like a page float up, and it would have gold highlight around some words. And that would keep happening over and over. And what was being highlighted in gold was where those particular documents spread the message that we are all one. And the only thing I can remember of those documents is a song by Nickelback. And there's apparently some Nickelback song that there's a line in one of their songs that says something about we are all one. And that was in this, download of information I got. And that experience fried me. I mean, it short-circuited my nervous system, and I was incapable of walking or talking or thinking straight for a couple of weeks. Like when I first got back from that, all I could do is walk around in circles in my kitchen. And then after that, I couldn't walk at all. And that's why I say dying is really not good for you. And it leaves permanent damage. You don't hear much about that from NDEers.
No, I know they go through a huge depression, a lot of them, because of what they experienced and how difficult it is to be back. It's look, like they all say it's not the way to go. Like, you don't have to die in order to have the experiences. It's not, it's not advisable. The downloads, it's almost like there was a movie I watched. I'm not sure if it was The Matrix or another movie where they downloaded programs into a character that he had to learn how to do karate, and then they downloaded that program into his brain, and then he could do it.
Yeah, that was The Matrix.
Something like that? Was it The Matrix?
It wasn't me. No, it wasn't anything like that. The concept's the closest that you can come, but downloads of knowings, like in The Matrix, Keanu Reeves was learning how to do things, his body to do things. So there's no body in the afterlife. So there's no learning how to do anything physical like that. It's just learning information. Like, some of the topics I received information on were that there's no such thing as time. That's a human concept. That math doesn't exist outside of human life. That's another language like Italian. That humans completely misunderstand mental illness. I got huge downloads about humans and what their character traits are, and then what we as light beings, what our character traits are, and how we're completely different from humans, and how the two work together. all kinds of stuff like that, just knowledge.
Yeah, it's difficult to kind of understand because we're not, well, we all have that forgetfulness. You say you come from a Roman Catholic background. Um, how has that changed now? Because I've heard from a lot of people that a lot that's in the Bible is not, what they teach you is not actually reality. How has it changed for you?
Well, I dropped religion. Religion is faith based on no evidence whatsoever. Once you've been in the afterlife and you've actually experienced the reality of source in the afterlife, there's no need for faith. You have knowledge. So, and of the 33 souls in my book, only the 2 Buddhists didn't completely change their belief systems. And there was one who was a Catholic pastoral counselor, and she kind of had the same experience I did in terms of being really angry about the fact that nothing she'd learned as a Catholic had anything whatsoever to do with the reality of God in the afterlife. But they all.
You give a series of calls every week. What do you share in your, is it webinars that you do?
Yeah, I have monthly webinars. They're on different topics, usually topics that my readers suggest. The one October 26th is 10 tips on how to prepare for death. And the one September 28th was deep dive into conscious manifesting. And I've done, like I had one on NDEers who saw Jesus in the afterlife. And I have them on guides and angels. And
so how can people get hold of you? I know you've written a book as well. Is that what's behind you?
Yeah, that's my 6th book. I've written 6 books.
Wow.
Yeah, the first 3 were just my afterlife experiences and my near-death experiences in the hospital. And then number 4 was Answers from the Afterlife, which I do a monthly newsletter. People ask me questions and I answer it in the newsletter. So I compiled, several years of those newsletters and put them into a book, Answers from the Afterlife. And then the 5th one is Create a New Reality. That's everything I remember about how we souls literally create physical matter and the physical lives that our bodies lead, and how to do it. And a lot of my webinar topics are about my books or little topics from my books. I also have a YouTube channel. It's just author Nanci Danison, I think. Or maybe it's just Nanci Danison. Or I have I think 29 videos on there. Some of them are interviews like you're doing, and some of them are short videos. And then my website is nancidanison.com. NANCIDANISON.com.
Wonderful. I'll post those links below. If a person wants to know their own soul purpose, how would you recommend them to kind of tune in to know what their purpose is?
I have one of my videos on my website is the 5 purposes of life. That was one of the downloads of information that I got while I was in the afterlife. And there really only 3 main purposes in life. And then the other 2 are one, just to have experiences. Doesn't matter what kind, just have experiences. And the second one is to try to act with unconditional love, regardless of how hard it is. But then there are 3 main reasons why we light beings choose to incarnate. They're not anything like what humans think they are. Like one of them is to be a support person for another soul who maybe it's their first time incarnating into a human, and you've been here before. So you agreed to come into human life with them so that they can lean on you for support. And so you might be the husband or the wife or the child or the rabbi or the teacher or somebody that a human would normally go to for support. And that's all that life's about. It's just being support. And then, or you might have a life where you've agreed to do a particular thing for someone else. Like maybe you agreed to be hit by a car for a light being friend who's a surgeon and who wants to find out what it's like to save a person from certain death through surgery. And so you've agreed to be their guinea pig. It's just one thing like that you've agreed to do with another soul. And the whole rest of your life is really not for any purpose other than just have experiences. But the primary reason most people come into life is to study a particular topic or theme of interest that is something the source cannot personally experience but can imagine. So let's say your topic is greed, and you want to find out everything you can about greed. You will learn 360 degrees of greed, and you will incarnate into every single creature and thing in the universe that can experience greed. And you'll experience from being the greedy person to being the victim of greed to being the subject of greed to being any kind of relationship around greed that you can have. And then you take all that information about greed back to source. And so when I said that I got downloads of knowings that were like personal experience, that's where those come from. See, all that knowledge that we gather in physical life goes back into source's mind, and it is available to all the rest of us.
Is there a way for people to tap into that? Or
I was shown a way to tap into source's knowledge. And I got a video on that, how to access source's knowledge. It's basically just focusing your attention and on what you want to know and your intention to know it. And then you have to get the body out of the way. And that's the only hard part, is getting all sensory input, all human thinking, all human emotions, all human input of any type out of the way, so that you can laser focus yourself as soul on learning what it is you want to learn from source's knowledge, what I call universal knowledge. Now, when you do that, you're not going to get a download of everything there is to know about something. It just doesn't. Remember when I said I got this download about everything that was written while I was working on my book, and that fried me for a couple of weeks? That's why you can't get that kind of a download of knowings while you're in a human body. But you might get a few sentences about something, or an idea about something, or just knowing. And I'm sure you've had that experience where you just said to yourself, well, I just know, I just know that. I don't know how I know it, I just know. You'll get that kind of a sensation.
it's like intuition.
Yeah, I think some people will
Well,
call it.
it's knowingness. It's knowingness, like you said.
Just know.
It's a knowing. It's not a feeling. It's a knowing. It's not a
Right.
guess. Yeah. What was the hardest part of coming back for you?
Dealing with all the physical disabilities from the
Yeah.
cancers, because I got cancer again in 2011, and the treatments just beat me up. So between the dying and the lack of oxygen to my brain and all the physical problems that Nanci's had since I agreed to come back, it's hard putting her through all that. And it's hard knowing that I could have prevented it.
You went through a tough time. And it sounds like you're still having that tough time.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to hear that.
Yes.
How are your relationships with people? Have they changed?
Other people told me I have been warmer and more loving. I would say that's probably the only thing. I'm still an attorney. I still think like a lawyer. I still talk like a lawyer. I still act like a lawyer. And I guess I'm never going to be the soft and warm and fuzzy person that somebody who hasn't been trained as a lawyer is. But I think I am softer than I was when I was practicing law.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely going to change you. if anything. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Before we go, do you have a message for our viewers?
At the end of my first afterlife experience, when I was given my mission, I was told to tell anyone who would listen what I had learned and experienced in the afterlife. And then the second one was to experience unconditional love in Nanci's life. And I thought that meant I was supposed to find a mate, another mate. I think I was divorced at the time of my first afterlife experience. And I thought I was supposed to find a mate who would love her unconditionally. And so I tried a bunch, kissed a bunch of frogs. But that's what I was trying to do for a long time. Then I went to my very first International Association for Near-Death Studies meeting. And I told my story and I told, my mission. And the leader of the group looked at me and she said, Nanci, you can always experience unconditional love. Give it away. So that's my message. If you really want to feel unconditional love, give it to others.
Yeah, I love that.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Because love actually, even if you've got your partner, the love you feel comes from inside. It doesn't come from outside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.